Well, hi everyone. This is the Domain of Life Part B. The domain I was talking about in Part A, where the shape, you look at our head, the shape, and here it goes, and then below it goes down like that. Now that may be the shape of creation. And so that you have the celestial bodies, the firmament, earth, man standing above, and then below earth, below the what may be reasonably flat, you've got this going down, and it's all undefined, suspended consciousness, and it works through senses. We connect through our senses, not through what's been defined to us that we're imagining to be true. Back in 2012, this vessel went to sleep for 2 weeks, and Fiona and Hannah Wood mostly looked after for the vessel for 2 weeks. Now, there was no stroke, there was no sickness, nothing happened. It just went to sleep, went to rest. And it took Fiona to contact a friend of ours a chiropractor friend of ours in Fiji, who came up with a garlic compound that she had to make and put under my feet, which helped me to come back fully back into my body. And then I had to relearn to walk because I had no balance. And as I was stumbling out slowly, or like a young child or a very old man walking, getting some kind of feel rhythm back in the body, I gradually walked down Roycross Street in East Bowral down to what we call the Ponds, which is now becoming the botanical gardens of East Bowral. And I noticed as the days went by that I had such heightened senses that I could see from a Kangaloo Road vehicles like trucks with sign writing on it, and I'm like probably a kilometre back, and I could zoom in and read the fine print, and it blew me away. And I also noticed that people walking along Kangaloo Road or on Old South Road, if anyone ever looks up, I was able to zoom in and listen to the conversations going on from probably more than a kilometre away. And it blew me away. It freaked me out. And the other thing that I noticed coming back from this very heightened sense, where I had this really deep peace and calm over the vessel for some period of time, I don't know what, months, weeks, I started noticing I could see inside people's bodies like X-ray vision and see what was going on. And it absolutely freaked me out. And I didn't want it. And I kept saying, no, I don't want this responsibility. I do not want this responsibility. It was like I was sort of looked at like, God, if people knew that I had this skill set, I'd have people from Bowral Station, probably 4 or 5 kilometres away, lined up from there all the way to the front door of Roycross Street, coming to see this man with this skill. And I didn't want that. Even though it may or may not happen, that's how I've motivated him to shut it down or to stop whatever. Now, I don't know how it stopped, but it stopped. And the residues of that experience in 2012, which was roughly June, July 2012, brought forth the ability to sense a more heightened perception of what was happening in the system. So, for example, the way I can liken it is like I had this ability to have 1 foot in the darkness of the scripts of fiction and 1 foot in the senses, which is not inside my head where I'm imagining things. It's what I'm feeling all around me, naturally sensing through the senses. And even though from 2005, 2006 to 2012, I had these other epiphanies where the creator, the living creator, first appeared to me as an androgynous being. I didn't know it was a living creator back in 1979 when this happened, deep in the snowy mountains up in the wild parts of the Victoria, in an area called Galantapy, W Tree Galantapy, 1979. I was woken up 3 o'clock in the morning. This presence was in the room, and the eyes had all the colours of life in wholeness, and there was this gold and yellow light, and may have been white light there too. And from the neck down to the shoulders, it faded into what we'd call the ether. And it didn't ask anything from me. It didn't tell me how to do anything. It was just this connection to absolute peace and love. That 2 week coming out of that 2 week sleep I had in 2012. It was that incredible deep peace and calm, as stillness, incredible stillness. And back in 2005, 2006, when the beginnings of Love for Life started, I was doing these 2-hour walks, and the thought came back of that experience back in 79, and I had said to myself, what was it? Because I used to think, was it alien, ET, something? I mean, I had no idea. And I had thought again while I'm walking, speed walking fast, keep myself fit, because I was already entering into the battles with Macquarie Bank over the theft of our family property and the destruction of our 2 businesses that today be well beyond $4 million, what they've stolen, which is what led me to become what I've become. Inspired me. The thought came back, and I said, well, what was it? And when I had my dog Sammy, he was quite elderly then, he was getting, oh no, he wasn't elder, but he was getting older. And bang, it was like 3 men. I don't know how to describe this, but I was literally, a force hit down around my belly button, just slightly below my belly button, like 3 very strong men all punched into my belly button or below there in one big force, one hit. And my whole body buckled over, and all my breath came out, as this voice said to me, it was the face of God. That what I'd saw and said was the face of God. And my body burst into a state of elation, and that peace and calm came over, and that color of white and yellow and all the wholeness of life and that stillness was present to what I experienced in 79. And there was this elation of immense joy. And now the voice spoke through everything that existed. There was nowhere the voice wasn't. As far as I could grasp the atmosphere and clouds, to the leaves and the trees that I was amongst, and the bark, through the soil and the ground, through the dog, through my body, through every cell in my body, the voice had penetrated everything, saying it was the face of God. And I pulled myself together, whatever you call, I don't know how you describe these kind of sensораmas, and I stopped and went back home to Fiona, and I told Fiona, "I'm not going to believe this. I think I'm going crazy. I had this experience." And we would talk about this. And I was doing 2-hour walks back then, 3-4 times a week. And I had stopped that 20 minutes to walk after this experience, and sitting down with Fiona back at the house, what do you do with this? What do you do with this experience? And I think I came up with the idea of, well, let's just create an imaginary bookshelf and put it up in there as a reference point. Let's just move on. We didn't want to sit and start getting into some ego thing and write. We were conscious of this. We didn't want to write a book about, oh, God spoke to me, and then I saw God, and start coming up with all this, convoluted scripts. Not that I was thinking like that. I just knew I didn't want to do that. And then then I went back to the walks, and then 3 weeks went past, and then on these 2-hour walks during the day on Old South Road, bang, this Aboriginal man appeared before me, and he told me his name. Now, it was so long, but I just call him Gugadunga. Now, I can explain these things to you because they come back to what we're talking about, the domain of life. But these were the kind of background influences that inspired me to do the work I'm doing in unraveling the scripts of fiction versus the consciousness that's undefined, of where our soul is in life, in the dream of life, which you see through a lot of the videos that I've been making with this man, or with Fiona together, or interviewed with Jani from the Truman Show, and others who wanted to talk with us and share these experiences. So anyway, to knock this down as quick as possible, this man literally moved his whole physical body, and I knew he was a man on the land. And I don't know how to describe this, but it was a physical manifestation, as if you were standing in front of me, talking to me as I came across on the walk. It was like that. And I could sense this man. I could, touch, taste, feel, smell, see. And he says to me, "I've been waiting for you for thousands of years." And I'm going, well, what does that mean? I don't know. I don't understand that, and I'm not going to let it. I already knew about the ego. I had great ego difficulties, great ego difficulties, huge ego difficulties. And by that stage of my life, I'd already started to come to terms of not living my life out of this stuff. That I just leave it aside and just look at these objectively and work out what the hell's going on. And and all I could remember were the rhythms, the melodies of the music, of traditional music of the man on the land, what we call the Aboriginal. And I don't know where he was living. I knew he was alive. He's still alive today. I know he's still alive today. Where, I don't know. And that same peace and calm, when the experience of the voice of God spoke to me, my body burst into all this like sweat and tears all over my body, and this white light with all that wholeness of color there with that like an aura. And the same thing happened with Gugadunga. And didn't tell me how to do anything, didn't ask anything from me, nothing. It was just this experience. And I don't know what it meant. And then it faded away, or he left, and I went home to Fiona. I stopped the 2-hour walk, we're the 20 minutes so into this walk along Old South Road, this 1 kilometre strip. Anywhere along there, these experiences were happening. And I said, well, I said to Fiona, you're not going to believe this, because we had young kids, and she's mum. I said, I think I'm going crazy. I really am. I think I've lost it. And we talk about it. What do you do with this? Well, we don't know. So put it up on this imaginary bookshelf and leave it there as a reference point. Let's move on. So we did. Many weeks went past, 2-3 weeks, whatever. Same walk during the day. All these happened during the day, except for the original 1979, which I was woken up from my rest about 3 in the morning. And during this walk, I must have been somewhere in late February, March maybe, bang, this American Indian appears before me. And he says his name was Running Water. And I knew the only way I can relate it to is like, it's like someone who works with you from the other side, sort of, like a spirit guide or something like that. And he says to me, I've been waiting for you for thousands of years. And then all I can remember was the rhythms and the melodies of all that Indian music. And then that sweat and the elation and the joy and the white and the yellow and all that was happening in this like suspended state of consciousness, this deep sensory stillness. And didn't ask anything from me, didn't tell me how to do anything. And whatever happened, it left. And I knew he was not a man on the land, that he was my head was like on the other side sort of thing, And I went back home to Fiona and said, I'm really him going crazy, we got to, I have to start looking careful at what's happening to me. And what do you do with this experience and all that? And so he said, well, just put it up on the bookshelf, leave it as a reference point, let's move on. Now we're doing these walks 3-4 times a week, 2-hour walks, fast walking. Keep my head clear for dealing with Macquarie Bank, because we decided to become self-litigants, dealing with this corruption that was going on. It was about May 2006. They both appeared suddenly, bang, like before me on this 2-hour walk. And when this experience happened, same with the dogs also engaging with them. It wasn't like, I'm not imagining, this is not an imaginary thing. This is pure sensory experience. But here I'm looking at a man on the land, Gugadunga, and Running Water, who's not a man on the land, and yet they're looking at each other, and there's no separation between them. None at all. And I'm sitting there swearing and going, what? I won't go using all the words now, but you can imagine the profanities coming out of my mouth. And then they turned, because they're looking at each other, then they turned and looked at me and they said, we've been waiting for thousands of years. And I still didn't know what that meant. And I still don't hold any importance in any exclusivity or privilege, because I don't buy into that anymore. That's only the ego does that. And again, that deep sensory stillness and calmness was there. The peace, the colour, the wholeness, the sweating, the elation, the joy, the deep contentment was all there. And then something happened, like when you're about to watch a movie and the screen, the curtains move apart and the screen opens up, and then before the film starts. Now, it didn't happen like that, but there's any way I can describe. Something happened where they sort of moved apart. And before me were all these lights of souls that were like a white light. Now, I can't count them. It was uncountable. It'd be quadrillions, zillion, billion, zillion, billions. I don't know, hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of thousands. But it's like if you could hold like a whole lot of water in your hand, and you could see every particle of water as a soul in wholeness, in co-creation with every other drop of water. That's a soul. And that there is no separation. That's the only way I could describe this. And they all said together, we've been waiting you for thousands of years. And then they burst into a song that was like black gospel music, but wasn't. It was just a song of celebration. And my body started dancing, and the dog, Sammy, started dancing as well. And this all, again, that white light, the joy, the color of wholeness, the elation, the tears, the sweating, that deep calm was all there. And it went on, and I have no reference to time when these experiences, and you've got to remember, I'm walking. Now, I don't know whether I stopped walking or whether I'm still walking, but these sensory experiences happen. Like, it's like, in the Matrix, where a gunshot and, and everything slows right down and everything's happening, in this multi-dimensional kind of imagery of that film. Where things are moving and ducking and weaving, everything is slowed down like that, and yet we're so present. That's like an eternal present sense, where the consciousness is so expanded beyond the concept of self, I, me, and mine, which is what became the heart of unraveling what the system is in our work, in this Love for Life work. And anyway, whatever there is no reference for me to describe these experiences. But I stopped, whatever happened, it faded away. The experience had faded away. I went home to Fiona, and this time I said, Fiona, I think I'm becoming normal. I just got this sense that something's normal happening, though I didn't have any idea what it was. Again, we put it up on the shelf, leave it as a reference, went move on, and within 2 days, the bank had gone down and changed the locks on the beach house through a contractor. And it brought me into the law. And through that, it brought me heavily into networking and internet. Which I won't go through all this now and discuss all that, but it is mentioned in other videos and articles that I've written about the encounters that brought me into becoming like Fiona's Mackenzie's partner and going to the law and in networking through emails and uncovering, multi-hundreds of unlosable court cases of this kind of fraud, or losing. And me telling Fiona, we're all lambs to the slaughter here. We're going to be done over, and everything we worked for 20 years and all that stuff that I did was just going to be stolen. And something inside me, because of my early life, because of the things that I went through, and I discovered during the Love Life work, years later after that 2012 sleep, I discovered that I had been sexually abused as a little kid. And my parents having a lot of violence and just a lot of deep disturbing things. And I had done a lot of work all over the years not to live out of this trauma. I learned to separate from it and look at things objectively, and then look at how I am and reacting, how these things are coming up. So I'm not under the influence of these traumas, but I allow the trauma to come through me so I can look at it. And that's how I discovered that I was sexually abused, because I saw 5 people via a woman who took the body of this little kid from the age of 1.5, 2, many times from my mother, from Edgecliff Road, Bowral, to somewhere in Maroubra, where the body was being sexually abused and penetrated in the anus. This little kid. And there's a lot that came up, and I saw all this visual imagery. I didn't want to look at the faces or anything, but I know that this happened. So what I'm getting at and talking about the domain and all this, and the earth below it suspended in its consciousness, is that our senses are not inside our body. The senses is the life of creation. It's like every droplet of water that makes up the whole ocean of droplets of water contains sensorama, sensory information. Each droplet particle is unique and original, is undefined, and yet it shares a history, a natural information of life, of creation, like a DNA held to uphold creation of the shape of the dome and all this stuff. And from 2012, and by the way, when they were saying we've been waiting for thousands of years, I got to realize the best I could comprehend was they're waiting for man, undefined man, us to wake up, to remember who we really are, and do, in this case, what this man's doing in this work, to show that fiction has nothing to do with reality and never leads us to truth or reality. And that's why there's no remedy in the system, and you'll never find a remedy in the system. And why I've gone to so much intense, fine detail to show and explain how fiction works and what's going on. So the way I comprehend this today is that one of our ancestors long ago had slipped into this defined ego that he had formed in his imagining through probably helping others in his tribe, and got a bit of self-importance and a bit of feedback from others as he was making suggestions and helping people with things that were going on, that the connection with reality, with people's direct sensory experiences, started to fade away as they were recalling the scripts in their heads from the definitions of this man's intention to shape a purpose for them and give them some kind of a purpose that suited what he thought was a better one than the one that they were creating for themselves. So whatever awkward psychotic state this man got himself into that began this ego thing, this kind of effect, and hence the forbidden tree, the snake around the tree being a man, or the forbidden apple from the snake that passes it to Eve, one man passing it to Eve, a man, Eve then passes it to Adam. All this is man to man to man. And this experience became the fall as we fell into the scripts that unfolded this dream world this man had invented, that he became obsessed with, and never let go of that. And so this became the evolution of hijacking a tribe. So basically the way I look at it, he might have been in a tribe in paradise amongst nature, then went behind a tree and started putting images remotely into those susceptible amongst his tribe or family or whatever, putting images in their heads and get them thinking that there's some whole higher power, higher being doing it to them, and them listening through enchantment and seduction and that to whatever those imprints of that man's intention was forming in their imagining, and having them believe that it was true. And he kept that secret so that even when he mixed in amongst the tribe again, they didn't know where it was all coming from. And now why he did this, probably because he thought that God had effed up creation, that man was not created perfectly, and he wanted to prove to God the creation, because every dream has a creator. Everything of creation has intelligence with intent that forms the experience of what we encounter with creation, with life, including fiction. And so he thought, well, there was no he then, there was no gender the way we comprehend it, but I just say he thought that he had to prove to God that he was right, the man wasn't made perfectly. And so he also thought that God wasn't talking to him. This is how desensitized he had become. When the creator, living creator, was always talking to him. It never not been talking to him. All through life, it's always communing with him, but he became shut down by his ego and listening to the scripts in his heads of his own imagining and becoming self-delusional. And this is the first man that ever fell into this delusional state. And so he thought, well, I'm going to force God to come out to talk to me. So he created a dream that he contemplated on for a long time, to cause man to commit spiritual suicide. And this became the information that filtered into what became the secret societies and Freemasonry and the occults that evolved into the Bible and the history of this 1,000-year golden reign, and the whole thing of the Nazi 1,000-year golden reign, and all the ties into the history of the Aryan bloodlines, and all this sort of, there's a lot going on about all this. But the goal was to bring about an earthwide spiritual suicide of man, of such a capitulation through fiction, worshipping fiction being reality, through whatever means that the man could conjure up, which is what we're experiencing today with Ukraine and Russia and all this sort of stuff going on, where everyone's entertained in the scripts, and every child's brought up in alphabet languages, and from there to learn the constructs and concepts of what forms the robotic drone life in the system, because these are all natural means, because no child can go to nature to learn any of this stuff directly from nature, from creation itself. You've got to learn it from another man who's been inculcated and brainwashed, who now worships that fiction. So, and everything of the fiction needs a man to perform it, because fiction can't do any performance on its own, and it never will. Even if we create robots and electronics and technology, it's still man creating it to perform the repetition of that sameness that we now call culting, where with life, where every man's created unique and original, not one the same as the next. And you'll never find two feathers the same, or two drops of water the same, or two particles of soil or air, or water, or anything. Everything's unique and original, never to be repeated. Even instances of what we call time, never to be repeated. Yet this man created a sameness to try to form fictions that could be recalled in our heads through scripts. So this evolved into bloodletting and blood libel and alphabets through ritual sacrifice. And I'll put some pictures up to show you what I mean by ritual sacrifice, and why every civilization always had ritual sacrifice, and the decadence of man, the abominations that of having sex with animals, and mass orgies, and just abuse of all our sexual energy, and there's so much of that that's tied into every civilization. Every civilization has this, as this one has it as well, and with it, extreme pedophilia, girls and boys, particularly boys, very young boys, and grooming and all this sort of stuff, and which is what the experiences that this man's had. So many different things that I've endured that's helped me have one foot in the dark, one foot in the light. This is just an analogies, right? To use this sensory ability to scrutinize, critical thinking, contemplate, and look at things objectively, and realize that fiction and what it is, and take it to the extremes of what fiction is, and realize there's nothing there. And that when you are entertained by fiction, you end up with nothing, because there was never nothing there in the first place. So basically, this man had to penetrate the domain of life of every man and get us imagining images of fiction. That's a daffodil, and that's yellow, that's Mars, and that's Venus, and that's a galaxy, and that's a solar system, and all of system science, all of quantum physics, because the constructs, the concepts don't exist.